Yeah. What'd you do?
Oh my God. I have a grow light I have a plant that is dying. I've got like an African violet in my office that is like, clearly I kill plants. And I put a grow light on it because there's not enough light in my house. And it's on a timer, so it just comes on by itself. So I'm just sitting here chilling, and then this thing flashes over the side. I'm like, and it's basically this light coming on to help me save this poor plant that is just dying in my office.
You don't have a green thumb.
But I do. I kill outdoor plants. Indoor plants. What I'm struggling with is I live in a house that is like north facing. And so no window gets enough sunlight for all of my plants. And I don't have room to just put them all in front of a window. So this house has killed a lot of plants. But I'm doing the most. I've got grow lights. I've got special soil. I've got moisture monitors. No, because I see you nodding your head in that way. That's like, no, you read. I don't kill plants, Mamuna. I do not kill plants. The house isn't helping me to nurture the plants.
Have you heard of this company called Easy Plant?
No. Do they sell fake plants?
No, it's real plants. It's just, it's like a self-watering plant.
But I water them. It's the sunlight.
It's just the light.
I'm telling you,
let's check back. Let's check back in a week and see how it's doing.
It's not doing good. I'm never sharing a photo of its
How did it get there?
Before I moved into this house, it was flourishing. It had bush. It had it used to flower, my little purple flowers. And then I moved into this house. This is the 4th location in the house that I have found for this plant, where it is struggling to find enough light to grow. Hence why I bought the grow light to give it extra, its own dedicated light, and it's not working. And I think I just may have suffered for too long in these conditions. What am I going to say? I'm Lola.
And I'm Mamuna. Together, we have a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech.
How are you doing, Mamuna? What's going on with you today? How are you?
I am thankful. It is the end of the week today.
TGIF and F.
A long week of just things, compounding together.
Yes.
So I'm thankful. How about yourself?
I'm peopled out, man. I am, like anyone who knows me, I'm the extrovert's extrovert. But the last 4 weeks, I have done too much. I'm really compensating for COVID. I have done 2 weekends away. I've taken the kid here, there, and everywhere. I've had lunches, brunches, breakfasts, dinners.
Sounds exhausting.
I just want to go to a cave in the dark by myself for 2 days.
I kind of feel like you might be doing this to yourself.
No,
here.
I'm doing too much. It's me. I say yes. I plan things, and then I get here. Yeah.
I'm the problem. It's me.
I'm the problem. It's me. Exactly. Exactly. But yes, it's okay.
Hopefully we learn.
We do learn. And obviously, this is all in the context of WTF is going on in banking right now. The last few weeks.
It has been real. It has been real. It's just a lot of things falling apart.
A lot of things. And we're not even, as we're recording this towards the end of March, I don't know if it's done or if, in a year's time, we'll look back and be like, so 2008, when we kind of hit that whole financial crisis, it wasn't day one and then day two. It was literally months of slow decline and then boom, Lehman Brothers and then Merrill Lynch and then boom, 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 boom. So I feel is this the real beginning? Is this the peak? Or is there more to come? Because every day we hear more about more and more banks kind of struggling or doing whatever. Although I do think there's a difference between Silicon Valley Bank and Signature and all the others that are struggling. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's wild to me how we are here at this point in time again.
Yeah.
After 2008, and it's back to the banks again doing all this. It's too much.
History repeats itself, right?
History is repeating.
I am curious to hear more about your thoughts when you said there that there's a difference between Silicon Valley Bank and the others. Tell me more there.
Oh, okay. So, the easiest one of that is Credit Suisse, which is the Swiss bank that is currently failing. It was bailed out by UBS. I think I have a lot of finance friends, some who have worked at Credit Suisse, great employer to a certain extent. But I think that particular institution has been known to be on dodgy footing for about a decade. So the fact that they're failing when banking wobbled isn't a surprise because they were like on the cliff edge anyway. I see them as completely different to Silicon Valley Bank, which based on all of the things that I have seen written about this, including the incredible writing of Matt Levine, it doesn't look like they were illiquid. This is not like a classic story of a bank that ran out of like money. It's actually like a bank that maybe made some poor decisions around long-term investments. And then they triggered a bank run where everyone tries to withdraw their money. It happened to happen in an age when no one had to queue outside a physical bank. And so it all happened in one day and people were just doing their own transfers on their phone. But then the reason I believe they actually failed, if I understand this correctly, is because in banks, you have to have this concept called like the lender of last resort. So like if you need to borrow money, you always have somebody who's like the person who will lend you some kind of money. And they had 200 billion in assets, but they needed to fund 42 billion in withdrawals. So all they needed to do was to ask for some money and they should have been fine. And as far as I understand, the leadership thought they would be fine, except for the time zone difference, because Silicon Valley Bank is on the west coast of the US. Their lender of the last resort was on the east coast of the US. And, you know, this might be hyperbolic, but the computer that processes this kind of request shuts off at 4 p.m. on a Friday. So basically, this bank collapsed and triggered other banking issues because a legacy tech computer said, I need a weekend and I finish work at 4 p.m. And that is ludicrous to me, but it's also completely different to the problems that Credit Suisse has. So like, they're not all the same, even though they're all happening at the same time. That's kind of where my head's at.
I was just, as you were talking, I was just trying to think about like legacy tech generally and where we find, like, if you think about the difference between US and maybe Europe.
Oh my
I know
God.
you were saying before that, what was it, like 20 years ago?
Yeah, the European
instant transfers.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is like an EU law, but like most banking institutions in Europe, if you send money from one account to another, they use something called like faster payments. And so
Fast payments.
at the very worst case, it will arrive the next day. But 99% of my experience in the UK and in Europe was like within minutes, your money is in the other account, or even like seconds. And the biggest shock for me moving to Canada was the fact that I had to go into a bank to open a bank account. I literally haven't done that. I don't know how long in the UK. B, that there's a whole bunch of banking transactions that I have to do in the bank. C, that I had to write checks to pay my rent because I can't do like standing orders or certain things at a certain value. And I had to write post-dated checks, which I got completely wrong and had to rewrite 12 checks. And if you send money, it takes ages to arrive anywhere. So a good example of this is I live in 3 currencies. I live in British pounds. Some of my income from work is in US dollars. And then I have Canadian dollars, which is where my salary comes in. When I get my US dollars income, if I send it to the UK, it literally arrives in seconds. When I try and send it to Canada, it takes 4 days.
Jeez.
That is ludicrous. And as far as I understand it, like legacy tech is killing finance in Canada and the US equally because like services like Venmo and Cash App don't have product market fit in Europe because your money just arrives straight away. You can literally just send money to someone and it's there. So it's a very weird world how computers shut off and like banking transactions take days and days and days in this part of the world, to be honest.
I mean, part of me wonders if the reason there hasn't been no innovation here is because banks want it that way.
Oh, 100%. This is why it was legislated in Europe. The banks wouldn't have asked for it, but the European courts decided that it was a requirement, and they forced banks to do it. Even I think in the last 10 years in the UK, certainly, they forced banks to make it easier for someone to switch all of their banking details within 7 days. So if you want to open a new bank account and you want to move over your information, the new bank account, once they have your approval, has the right to request everything to come over from your old bank account, and your old bank account has to do it in 7 days. That is a government law that the bank has to stand by. It wouldn't be done by the banks otherwise. They don't want you to leave. They don't want you to take all of your transactions somewhere else. They kind of want to keep you. But they were like, no, they didn't appreciate the banks enforcing a poor experience and using their monopoly power on people.
Holding you hostage.
And that's what happens here. And as progressive as Silicon Valley Bank was, as tech forward and, you know, banking entrepreneurs and startups and offering all of these unique services that you don't get from a standard traditional bank.
Down by a 4 p.m. machine.
They were taken down by a piece of legacy tech somewhere in the system that is just like, come on, you know, it's just, I'm sure there was more to it than that. They made mistakes with their strategy and there are things they could have done better, but it feels ludicrous that a computer decision could do that. And I think similar to a story I told a few weeks ago, like a bunch of services that we don't expect to be held back by legacy tech, somewhere in the line, there's literally a machine that someone has put a fan in front of because it's so old and decrepit.
And a floppy disk.
And a floppy disk. And it makes a noise and they have to turn it down every once in a while and stroke it and speak nice words in order to get it to switch on. But no one realizes that that is the point of failure that's going to take down a whole industry. Who knew? If we are at the beginning of a banking crisis that is, again, global, and that computer is responsible, that is the biggest own goal in the history of own goals, as far as I'm concerned. It's like utterly ridiculous that we are here. We have a letter.
Shall we? Yes, let's get into it.
Yes. Did I read the last one or did you?
It was me.
Okay. I will read this one. Why do I not believe you? Why?
No, I did.
Okay, you did.
Promise,
Okay.
I promise. We could check the tapes.
We can check the tape. Okay. I'll read it.
Yes.
All right. So, dear Lola and Mamuna, I've been in my current role and company for a few years now and have met most of my goals around my development in the field I'm in. I work closely with our customers and my job allows me to dig into everything from technical issues to business strategy and marketing. For the last year, I've been wanting to make a switch to a slightly more strategic role dealing with business partnerships and sales. I've applied for internal and external roles and always get an interview. But somewhere along the line, I always get a rejection. When I ask for feedback, it's a mix of looking for more specific experience or experience managing people. With the internal roles, however, when I follow up to see who they have hired, it's often someone with less experience than me. I'm getting very frustrated. I feel like I've done all the right things, but somehow I'm never the right fit. I do love my job, but I also want a new challenge, and I want to feel like I have room to grow new skills. How can I break this cycle? Anon, Canada. Ooh. This is a good one. Yes.
It's a good one.
So tell me, what are you thinking?
Start. So, I mean, as you were reading that, the thing that really just stood out to me in this was them saying that they've applied for several roles internally and externally, and they always get an interview, but somewhere along the line, they get a rejection. And that's so interesting, right? Because that means that something about them is causing a person to say, I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And then when interacting in some whatever way, they're getting that rejection. And so the first thing I think about there is, how are you describing or talking about what it is that you do when you're thinking about that new role?
Yeah. I think you're right, because it sounds like this person has a lot of experience. And so if you're hiring, you want to de-risk, you want to go for someone with a lot of experience. But then it matters how they talk about that experience? Did you happen to just be there and you were told to do this? Or did you take ownership? Did you think about, did you apply strategy? Did you, do more than the bare minimum in the role? And I think some of that stuff comes out in an interview. Sometimes it's in the CV as well, if it's too generalized, but it comes out in an interview and then people don't know if they can believe your experience as such. They're kind of questioning how much you really have grown or done in your role.
Yeah, and I think you said two really interesting things there. Hopefully I don't forget what I was just about to say. One of them is how you talk about what you do.
Yes.
Right. So it's the person that goes in and rambles off like the task list.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, here are all the like things I do day to day versus here's the impact. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, I know when I was doing a lot, I haven't touched my resume in a very long time, but I remember when my first versions of my resume was just like a long task list of stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There was no real story behind it. There was no talking about impact. It was just,
here's everything I've done.
I navigate meetings. I facilitate conversations and all that fun stuff. How would you tell a person to not do that? Like, what would you recommend they do?
Well, so even as you describe CV, because obviously they're getting interviews, but even as you describe CV, the thing I find interestingly ironic is like 15 years ago, I went to a one-page CV. So the more experience I got, the less pages I used to describe my experience, because it wasn't about how much I'd done. It was more about what I had done. So that connecting back to the impact. And by constraining myself to one page, no, I didn't make the font super tiny. It meant I had to be quite opinionated about what I put in that sense. And I do think people struggle to pull out impact stories in general. So, one of the things that I have learned over the years is like a lot of businesses right now, and certainly in tech, it's incredibly prevalent that they optimize for like a behavioral interview. So behavioral interview typically says we're going to ask questions that are grounded in things you have done and experienced, not just your opinion about what you would do when faced with a hypothetical situation. So I might ask a question like, Mamuna, tell me about a time in your career where you had to navigate a product pivot. Tell me what the situation was, what factors did you consider, what did you do, and what your reflections are now that if you had to do it again. And as I ask those kind of questions, people sometimes struggle to stay in the specific example. So they'll try and be like, well, I think in general, you blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but specifically what happened in that situation? But what did you do? Did you have the right experience? And I think there's an idea that you have to talk up what you would do in the future. But a lot of the value of behavioral interviewing is that it helps an interviewer to understand how you think now based on things you have done before. And it's not how you think because you think this is what I want to hear. And that nuance is so important. And I think as somebody, like, I can't tell you how many hours, like you and I have probably done, so many interviews. But I certainly, if someone can't represent their experience in a grounded, specific way, it's a no hire. Like, I need you to talk credibly to the thing. And you're allowed to talk about mistakes, but your reflection should help me understand how you think about those mistakes. You're allowed to talk about your growth, but your reflection should help me understand where you are in that growth path. And I think if you're representing yourself too generically or trying to hit the buzzword bingo, it's just going to sound a bit and then just be like, well, this other person was more specific. And so they kind of get the role, right?
Yeah. And that very translates really nicely into the second bullet there, which is, for me, I remember I had one resume and in that one resume, I tried to capture everything and I applied for all the jobs with the same one resume. And that is just going to instantly fail because you cannot, what is it? The jack of all trades,
master of none. There it is. Yeah.
You cannot expect to capture every single role in one resume. Like there's just no way that you can do that because everything now becomes watered down because you think that you are trying to speak to every person in their own voice, right?
Yeah.
And if you truly are trying to craft for a role, you have to think about how to carve your experience to meet the needs of the different roles. That takes time. Like you have to look at the job description. You have to understand the needs of the role.
Yeah.
You think about your experience
Yeah.
and apply like some deep thinking here
Yeah.
to match the two. There's some interesting, there's a website called like jobscan.co where you can upload your resume, link the job description and see where the two overlap,
Ooh.
which is interesting.
That's like what LinkedIn does as well. Like LinkedIn will give you, like if you look up a job on LinkedIn, it'll tell you how many skills you have that are the skills that other applicants for the job have. So you can see how well matched, well, depending on how you use your LinkedIn, because obviously if you don't use it particularly well, then that's just trash. But I like that idea of trying to help you match. Like, do you fit? Can you respond to that, you know?
Yeah. And I think, you have to curate your resume to match the opportunity you're applying for. And so, really taking that time, I think, is an important part of the step here. And again, really thinking about what points in your resume you are trying to make. Don't just add something there for the sake of adding it. Every single point you have in there is a data point about yourself. You want the employer to think, if I hire this person, what are they bringing to the table? Not just,
100%.
oh, they are great at facilitating meetings. I keep saying that one because I see that one a lot. And so you want to make sure that
not the point
you're bringing more. Yes, you're bringing more than that.
And I think, so reading this again, the person who submitted this, they're talking about wanting a strategic role with business partnerships and sales. In tech, those are two different job families. And so if you are representing your experience in a business partnerships interview, you want to talk about your strategic view on like long-term product opportunities. You want to talk about understanding the market dynamics between one business and another. You want to talk about how to negotiate around a deal with like win-win metrics and so forth. If you're talking about sales, what's the biggest number? What's the largest deal you've done? How much revenue? Over what time? What's the profit? What's the margin? Like, there are overlaps, but they're different job families. And so how you represent your experience to sound more specific to business partnerships versus sales, you need to tweak. You need to tweak to say the right things in the moment,
100%. I think another thing that stood out to me in this was them noting that they were getting very frustrated that they've done all the things right, but they are finding that sometimes a person who has less experience is being pulled into the role.
Yeah.
And what's interesting there to me is that if you are able to tell your story right and you're able to tell your story right and tell it often right. I think that part of the challenge, depending on how you are raised and where you come from, we oftentimes are very humble.
Yes.
We don't want to
you don't want to sound
overshare. We
arrogant.
don't want to.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what you think is arrogant is maybe just a small step compared to what someone else is doing. So that person who has a little experience is potentially telling a hell of a story about their experience because they know how to talk about what they've done. Not only know how to talk about what they've done, but they are very comfortable in this space.
100%.
Right? They're comfortable just sharing. 100%. And so part of the challenge here is having that awareness to say, okay, I know generally that I may be a bit more shy to talk about my growth and my wins, but this is the time. If you want that job, if you want to move, like this is the time to really just polish that what is it, the copper, brass, I don't know, whatever it is, and let it shine.
Let it shine.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Let it shine. Well, also,
those metals. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is also like if you are interviewing for jobs in North America and Western Europe, but you were raised in a culture where humility and modesty is a virtue, you are going against your conditioning to represent yourself well in that interview. Because, if your parents, it might be in your head. It's like, if my parents heard me now, they'd be like, don't overdo it. Just, keep your head down, like do whatever. But you have one opportunity to say, I'm the right person for this job. And you got to say it in the room. And, maybe like a key here is record yourself, do practice interviews with like friends and coworkers and people who can help you understand what you sound like when you're describing your experience. In the same way that like an athlete will record themselves so that they can correct their form, and they need to see it from this like reflective state to understand, oh, I'm not standing up properly. I'm not bending my knee. I'm not flexing that thing that I should be doing. This is exactly one of those, especially when your culture values modesty. That is, you probably need to go to a point where you're uncomfortable describing your experience before you're probably doing what is expected in like a North American Western job context, because it's very different.
I'm laughing to myself as we talk about cultures and humility because, most cultures outside of North America and like some European areas are like preach humility.
Yeah. Oh,
but then you
100%.
have Nigerians.
Oh, mate, listen. We don't even understand the word. Is it even is it in the Nigerian like dictionary? Do we get humility? Hell
Oh my
no.
gosh.
Everybody is the CEO and the chief this.
CEO.
Everybody's
Chief
family.
barrister.
Oh yes, barrister, doctor,
This.
professor. My family is royalty.
Professor, doctor.
Oh yeah, no. But it's aside from
acronyms.
all of the acronyms.
Yeah.
This is also why we have 20,000 degrees, because we want to list them all on every
you.
piece of paper that's got our names on it. It's got to have all the degree letters after it. But it also reminds me of an Instagram account that I love called MBA-ish. Look them up, MBA_ish. They're not, this is not an ad, but I really like it, where they kind of play on corporate, just like memes and stuff. And they always do this thing where it's like, describe your job, and then they'll give you like an MBA-ish version of your job. So there's like one where it's like, I park expensive cars. I'm a valet and I park expensive cars for customers. And they were like, I manage a multi-million-dollar asset portfolio and use turnkey solutions to optimize the outcome. And I'm like, this is exactly, it's too much and there's definitely bullshit bingo. But I do think some people need that boost. It's like, record yourself,
100%.
talk to your Nigerian friends, use MBA-ish, help you pull out of that modesty rut. And then hopefully you're representing yourself well to a certain extent. So there you go.
I love it. So what is our summary of advice here?
Yes. Well, yeah. Probably practice interview with someone or record yourself describing your experience, because if you are getting to the interview stage, it's probably not your CV, but it's going to boil down to how are you talking about your experience in the moment. And it might be useful to use that medium to reflect and have someone tell you what you are and are not doing in order to kind of help you understand how to course correct.
Yeah. And another item there is how you tell your story, right? So having a strong narrative, I love to tell people to have 3 or 4 stories that they go to as their like anchor points. And then from those stories, you can now start to pull out, what if someone were to ask me different scenarios in behavioral interviews?
Yes.
How would I adjust my story to answer that question?
Yeah. And key to that is those stories can't all be, I did a great job. Behavioral interviews will be looking for shit went down. What did you do? Or big change needed to happen. How did you make that change? Like, it's got to be dynamic. Your stories have to be dynamic. They have to represent a real set of experiences about what happens in life and work in general. And yeah, for me, I would say practice, because building the muscle memory to talk about your experience in a certain way. If you haven't had a new job in a while, you do get out of practice of interviewing. And so you have to kind of reset that muscle and practice again and really think about, how do I talk about myself? And it will only get better the more you do. Good luck, letter writer. I hope they get a
Yes.
new job. We should get people to write back and be like, what happened? We'll do
Right,
updates.
right.
We'll do
Yes,
updates.
that'd be fun.
Send us your
That'd be fun.
updates. How did you do? And then
Yes.
we'll revisit.
Hey, I'd like to give my 2 cents here. It's Jermaine the Job Father, and this is a very interesting question, and it's one that hits close to home for me. Honestly, when you are applying and you're getting interviews and you're not able to break through that mold, it can be very frustrating, and you can do a lot of, I want to say, ungraceful thinking towards yourself. So for the very first thing you should do is realize that, A, you're having a great success in the fact that you're getting interviews, right? If you weren't getting interviews, it'd mean the problem was with your resume. If you're getting interviews, the problem or the hurdle that you're facing is somehow how and who you're interviewing with. So in order to break this cycle, I would encourage you to keep pursuing external roles. When it comes to internal roles, I'm of the mindset that your best bet for your career, especially if you're earlier on, is to work in as many different environments as possible and to not waste your time in environments that don't fulfill you, satisfy you, or actually value you for the work that you bring to the team. So keep on pursuing those external roles. And when you're in front of an interviewer or a hiring manager, one thing I always like to do is to try and find different ways to niche myself towards what this person or the company or even the product that they service is looking for. If you see in the job description, there's an emphasis on team and managing people, prioritize rounding about all of your answers around that topic. If you see that there's a great value mix to leverage maybe your product knowledge or your knowledge of an industry, talk from the perspective of a guru that has that high level value and that high level knowledge of self, or at least an enthusiast that's always, right in the thick of things and experimenting with the different technologies and the different trends within that type of vertical. But I would also say that you also got to look at the numbers that you are interviewing by. So my general rule of thumb, when it comes to interviews, if you're averaging anywhere between 1 to 2 interviews every 2 weeks, that's actually a really good frequency for your interviews. Even in the context of what the job market looks like right now, if you're getting an interview or two every 2 weeks, you're on a really good pace. Now, obviously, you want to increase that. And if you're below that margin, you need to take a step back and figure out what it is that you need to be doing. Does it mean you need a better resume? Does it mean you need to get more applications out the door? Or should you be networking? Or are you going for roles that aren't a good fit for you level-wise or skill-wise based on your resume? But to wrap that all up, when in doubt, go get a new job somewhere else.
As we close out, Mamuna, tell me, what are you learning about this week?
Well, I have a company, and
A side
as
hustle?
part of that company, yes, yes.
Okay.
Founded it 5 years ago with my co-founder, who's Ghanaian, and in the world we're in right now, we're trying to update some of our tech that we've built, and so I am currently learning about media players. We have
wow.
one, and I am looking at updating the current format. So not even format. I'm researching about formats, but I'm looking at updating the player altogether. And I'm learning about HLS and IC formats. And did you know that ICY, which is a format, stands for I Can Yell? Apparently.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Fun fact.
Yeah. So that's the rabbit hole I've gone down the past week. How about yourself?
Wait, before we get to me, Mamuna, because when you put this in the notes and said I'm going to talk about this, I was kind of like, okay, cool, media players. What you left out in the most non-Nigerian way is number one, I have a business. It's 5 years old. I mean, this is our podcast, girl. Can we please platform some of your achievements? Can you tell the people, what's this business? Where can we spray you some money? Okay.
No. So it's called Atunwa Digital.
Okay.
And basically it focuses on helping African publishers monetize their content.
Cool.
So think about anyone in the diaspora, really. So if you're Nigeria, Ghanaian, Kenya, wherever you're from, let's say you're in country or you're living abroad somewhere. If you're living abroad, let's say you're in the US and you want to hear some sounds from back home. So you tune into like Wazobia
FM.
or like any of the local, any of the local channels, and you're listening to content.
Yeah.
So when you listen to content, ads play.
Right.
Those ads, you likely don't want ads that are local to Nigeria. You want ads local to wherever you are.
Right.
So that's what we do. We help publishers localize their ad
to where the listeners
for where the listener. And then within country, we're also thinking about making sure that the performance of the player matches like the limitations potentially of the phone, of the data availability, thinking about like streaming quality, all these fun things. But there are like things that we want to grow into. So I'll have lots of things to talk about.
So Mamuna, who is currently a VP at a very large company, has a newborn, is also running this multinational business and has been for 5 years, just in case anyone was feeling slightly inadequate about their achievements. Please see here my friend who is making me think, damn it, what's the other businesses that I need to do? No. All jokes aside, I love that concept. I love it also because it's one of those B2B plays where you're solving the kind of problem that people don't even pay attention to. I love that aspect of tech. It's like there's always an in-between thing that is like, 1, necessary, 2, there's a market for it, 3, there's like money being spent on it, but not everyone can see it. And if you can insert yourself there, you create something that's quite steady and resilient over time. It's like the ideal dream. And also anything for the African continent. Hell yes. Can we just say?
Yeah. It's so interesting working in this space because you realize a lot that there are not biases, but there are assumptions people make about content, right? And so if it's content from anywhere on the continent, folks are like, well, what are they saying? Or what does that mean? Or, like there are questions that people naturally ask as you expose them to areas that they probably never would normally go to or content they would normally never come across. And so there's a lot of education that has to be done.
Yeah.
So people feel comfortable with the content and then place their ads on top of the content.
That's so interesting. I mean, me personally, I would probably VPN so that I could listen to some ads from the continent because I love how wacky some of our ads are. It gives me joy to listen to ads from like Nigeria or actually Kenya has very hilarious ads as well. But no, I absolutely love that business. I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
In the show notes, we will put the URL for the company.
Yes.
Okay. Should we do our outro?
Wait, hold on. What are you learning about?
What am I? This is going to go back to me needing to learn some of your Zen mastery because, as I said at the top of the episode, I'm peopled out. I'm doing too much. I'm actually on holiday this week. But have I stopped working? No. Have I stopped planning? No. Do I remember how to do nothing? No. So this week, I'm learning, what does R&R mean for me right now? How should I optimize for this necessary downtime, alone time that I seem to be totally underestimating, but it's completely necessary for me. And I think I'm learning in a very, as Jamaicans would say, like, if you can't hear, you must feel. As in, like, my husband keeps telling me and has been telling me for years that I do too much. I am learning the hard way this week that I do too much. And I'm feeling that I need to fix my life. But I also want to start a business because, I'm just inspired by you now. So I'm just going to write my business ideas down and then I'm going to go have some meetings about my business ideas. And then maybe I'm going to start.
I like this. I mean, this is also a thing that we do. So this is,
I love this. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're doing too much. We've made this show for you and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Oyelayo-Pearson.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Bussa, with theme music by 031 Mash.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.